glasses clean enough for this? No, my glasses are dirty. One time I had a customer be like, hey, your glasses are really dirty. Like 4 hours into like one of the worst shifts of my life. And I was like, thanks, dude. And then he didn't tip me. I was like, what? And I was like, why would you say that to me? Anyway, hey, so getting into reading is hard, especially if you like read a lot as a kid, which I don't know if I read a lot as a kid, but I remember enjoying reading as a kid and then I just stopped doing it. It's all about the books you pick when you first start getting into reading. And I personally got into reading by reading It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And then I proceeded to read like 6 of her books. And I just think there's better books to get you into reading. And so we are going to be talking about 10 books to get you into reading that are not Colleen Hoover. In my opinion, all of these were really easy to read, or they were interesting enough that it was like, actually, none of them were hard to read, if I'm being so honest. I'm not going to act like they were. But all of these are some of my favorite books. I think I rated all but one of them at least 4 stars. I want to start with the young adult books first, because sometimes everyone's like, you should read this young adult book, and then it's so young adult that it's like unenjoyable as an adult, or it's just not like giving your inner child anything to make you enjoy it. So I picked a few that I read in the last year or two that I really felt like were good, even though they were YA. The first one is To All the Boys I Loved Before. This was super cute, and especially if you've seen the movie and you love it, I would recommend reading this because it's pretty similar. Like when I read it, there was very few things that felt different to me. I think I read this in like 2 days, and it's not even like the most fastest paced book ever, and like a bunch is happening, but it's captivating and it was really fun to read, and it's just so cute. Like if you want just a cute little high school romance, this is your gal. But what I liked about this book too was like the Asian girl gets the jock, which was fun. I think that's half the reason why I love this story so much, is because usually it's not an Asian girl. So there's good representation in this. It's a really cute story. And if you haven't seen the movie, then you can read the book and then watch the movie. And Peter Kavinsky is my favorite book boyfriend ever. I liked him more in the movie, but that's okay. Like, it's fine. But I think this is a really good YA romance to get you into reading. The next one is I'll Give You the Sun. Who's this by? Jandy Nelson? Jandy? That says Jandy, right? Is that a name? Sorry, don't mean to insult oh my god, One Direction. I don't mean to insult Jandy Nelson and their name, but I've never read the author. I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, her name is Jandy. Oh, she's so pretty. I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This is about a brother and sister. The girl's name is Jude, the boy's name is Noah, and they're twins. And they're like I think it follows them from when they're 13 till they're like 16. I could be wrong about that. But it's very much like sibling relationships and how complicated those can be. And it's very much like siblings have the same parents, but it seems like they have different parents because they're just treated so differently. Has good queer representation because Noah has a crush on a boy. I can't remember his name. And yeah, there's some miscommunication and then they're mad at each other. And it was really interesting. And it was so well done for portraying like teenager sibling relationships specifically. And how, oh my god, being in high school is just the worst thing ever. Anyway, this is a really good one. And then we have one that I just read. I just read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. And then there's a second one called Aristotle and Dante Dive to the Waters of the World. I think is what it's called. This was on my shelf for over a year and I picked it up and I'm so glad that I finally did. It's about Aristotle and Dante. Aristotle goes by Ari. And they live on a border town and they're from Mexican families and it's like 1985. 1980 something or other. They obviously like each other. That's not a spoiler, I promise. But it explores like Mexican American identity, explores like family trauma, it explores high school, it explores queerness, and very like this is peak coming of age to me. This is the first one, and then yeah, the second one. The second one was definitely not as good, but like I was so attached to these characters. I finished the book and I had nothing to do, and so I got up and went and bought the second book and started it. It starts when they're 15, and then the second book ends when they're going to college. So this ends when end of their junior year, I think, the end of that summer or something. And it's so innocent. It captures like the innocence of being a 15-year-old so well. This is a really good one, and it's quite fast-paced too, and like the chapters are super short and stuff, so it was really easy to read. So the only reason I read it so quickly is because I had time. Otherwise I would have been like, let me read a couple chapters and then sit down, and that totally would have been cool too. So I don't read a lot of fantasy or sci-fi because I think it's difficult to read, if I'm being so honest. However, I did just recently finish the Darker Shades of Magic series. That I blew through this, and I have said this a million times. I don't like long books, I don't like series, and I don't like sci-fi fantasy. This trilogy was so good, and the books are long, but just like Aristotle and Dante discovered the secrets of the universe, the chapters are super short. They're like, most of them are like 10 pages or less, or maybe not. That's what it feels like when I was reading it. Like the chapters are super short. It was just so easy to read, and I really appreciated that because it was still such a complex world, but it was not hard to understand, and I felt like I knew what was going on the entire time, and I was rarely confused. And it's just so intimidating to like see a 6-book long series and all of them are like 700 pages, and like you're like, the world building is insane. The first one is 400 pages, the second one is 500, and the last one is 600 pages, so they are long books, but they like, it didn't matter, and to me that matters. And so if I'm saying it didn't matter, then I would just try it. I would really try it. Okay, next I have a couple of romance books. So these are both super popular. I have Happy Place by Emily Henry and Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Emily Henry is obviously like the romance girly right now. Her books are really good, and I am a little bit of a romance hater, I'm not gonna lie. I do read a lot of romance in hopes that I'm gonna like it, and I rarely do. And I honestly don't even like that many of Emily Henry's books. This is the only one I rated 4 stars. The rest of them were like 2 or 3. What's good about Emily Henry is it's realistic while still being a book. Like, you know what I mean? It's not too realistic for you to be like, like, I could have done that. The way she writes friendships is really special too, and that's one of my favorite parts about Happy Place was the friendships that were going on. This was good because it wasn't just about the romance to me, and usually like one of the reasons I don't like romance books is that I think there's like no depth to them. This, however, was very, very good, and I felt like there was a lot of depth to it. It's not my favorite romance book by any means, but I think it's a really good one to get you going, especially if you want something that's not like super silly to read a romance and get into it. Like, this is not silly at all. It is super fun because it's like the president's son and then the Prince of England or Britain, whatever, and they get in a little feud, if you will, and so they have to do a bunch of press stuff to make it seem like the crown and America are on good terms. You can assume what happens from there. And just the way they just don't like each other. And it's not even like a enemies to lovers thing, because they simply just did not like each other, and then they were forced to spend time with each other in each other's countries, and it's just really funny. What else? I also liked this because even though it is a little bit longer, it's like 400 pages. Yeah, it's a little less than 400 pages, so it's longer than your typical romance, but it is so busy and so funny. The politics in this cannot be accurate. Like, there's no way they are. So if you care about that, maybe don't read this. I read this pretty early on into me starting to read, and it was quite consumable. And I feel like a lot of the books I read when I first started reading were not. And I was like, this is chill. I liked this guy. And there's a rumor that this was originally like a Obama fan fiction. It wasn't, but I love the idea of that. Anyway, this is super fun and I really liked it. And I have actually gifted this book to people and been like, you should read this. So, and this is always when I recommend to people when they're like, I want to start reading. I'm like, this is good. Okay, now we're going to get into some like general fiction. So one really popular author that I read most of her books when I first started reading was Taylor Jenkins Reid. And Malibu Rising is my favorite by her, that's why I grabbed it. But she did Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Carrie Soto is Back. But Malibu Rising is my favorite, and I think all of her books are good if you are like a pop culture celebrity girl, because that's why I like her books so much, if we're being honest. Like, I love me some celebrity drama. I will never like comment about it on the internet, but I will read about it. So this one is about, what's her name? This is about Nina, and this also is intertwined with Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is fun. And Carrie Soto is back. So I can't remember if Daisy Jones and the Six is like weaved in through this one, but they're all low-key connected, I'm pretty sure. I think all of them are. At least Seven Husbands and Carrie Soto and this one are connected. So that's super fun. This one is about, so her dad was one of Evelyn Hugo's seven husbands. And so like their dad left them and he was whatever, and family owns a restaurant. This one is also very like complicated sibling moment. Her husband left her for Carrie Soto, I think is what happened in this. And it's just like so messy, rich celebrity, LA, whatever. I don't know. It's fun. It's really fun. And it starts with like the house being on fire, I'm pretty sure. And there's this like crazy party that happens. And so it's like foreshadowing the fire, I believe. And then it goes back to like what was happening in the days prior. And just the way this is written is so interesting too, because the second you have a question of like, oh, what happened with this, then it gets answered. And I'm like, perfect. So I need to reread this. I love this one so much. But I really liked that like the main relationships in this was between the four siblings. Yeah, I need to reread this. I do think Daisy Jones and the Six is the most popular for a good reason. This just happens to be my favorite. So, okay, I actually didn't like this book that much, but it was so easy to read that I like can't not recommend it. It's Before We Were Innocent. This is part of Reese Witherspoon's book club, and I think if I would have read this when I first got into reading, I would have been like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. But this is a super popular book. Like, I just personally thought it was mid. I would call this a low stakes book because you don't get like so invested you must read it all in one sitting, but it's interesting enough that it keeps you wanting to turn the page. It's about these two friends who, when they were kids, their other friend died on their vacation, and they like were blamed for it originally, and then whatever, they stopped talking, and then like all these years later they reunite again under like the weirdest circumstances ever, low-key. But so it goes back and forth from like when they were kids and going on the vacation to the present day when they're, I don't know, there's just some press about it because one of the friends, her fiance, went missing, and they're like, oh my god, she killed her friend and now she killed her fiance. And so it's kind of like how it all lays out and like how it's connected and like, is it connected or is it not, or blah blah blah. And like, I don't know, just like reading about like rich teenagers like and their friend accidentally dying on their trip it was so interesting. The reason I thought it was mid is because like the ending was just like a little bit disappointing, but like I still liked this. Like it was still good. And it's so easy to read. Like, this is such, like, I wish someone would have given this to me when I started reading. Like, read this. Okay, lastly, we're going to go over some nonfiction books. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, and when I do, I usually don't like it. And I'm recommending these because sometimes people just don't want to read fiction right away, but they want to read. And sometimes fiction just doesn't do it for people. So I picked these out. These were both 5-star reads for me, and they made it in my top 10 last year. The first one is The Art Thief. And this is about a guy and his girlfriend who stole like billions of dollars worth of art before they got caught. And like just the fact that this actually happened is insane. And so what's the guy's name? Stefan? Yeah, I forget his girlfriend's name. But so Stefan like started dating this girl, and he like lived in his mom's house, and they like went to an art museum, and he like stole from it, and then he just kept stealing, and she like was like in on it and whatever, and they like didn't have the best relationship, but like he just like put it in his mom's attic, and she'd be like, oh, what's that, honey? He'd be like, oh, I got it from an estate sale. And he sold $2 billion worth, billion with a B, $2 billion worth of art. It's crazy. It's so good. This reads like fiction, and I think that's what makes it so incredible. Who's the author? Michael Finkel. He ate this up. Except freaking Goodreads is all like, this is boring. It's not boring. If it was boring, I would have hated it. This is not boring because you're like, how the hell did he keep getting away with this? $2 billion. And then the last one is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. So I also specifically picked this because I know a lot of people read John Green's YA novels when they were younger and like haven't read since. So I think this would like so be like, oh, this is so fun to be reading like his nonfiction like as an adult. I do think he really captured the human experience super well, like in the way he wrote things and the way he characterized the characters. I don't like essay collections. I do not like essay collections. This, however, is different. And I'm a huge John and Hank Green fan. Like, they are my favorite people ever. Like, if I could meet a celebrity, it would be Hank Green. So this is just essay collections that he started writing during COVID, I think. And the way it's written is he picks like a topic. For example, the song You'll Never Walk Alone, or Haley's Comet, or what's another funny one? Oh, penicillin, or like the internet, or like the QWERTY keyboard like layout. And he like connects it to story in his life. But what makes this book so good is he's also teaching you the history of that thing. Like, I'm reading it and he's talking about the Indianapolis 500, and I did not realize how much I did not know about race cars until I read that chapter of this book. And it's so heartbreaking isn't the right word. It's just like, this book really makes you appreciate being a human and being alive. He talks about his anxiety and his depression and his OCD and his wife and his kid and Hank, and it just like puts a lot of stuff in perspective for you. And I cannot imagine like being like a John Green lover while I was a kid and then reading this. Oh my god, that has to be the best experience ever. Those are the books that I think you should read getting into reading. And I only got into reading like 3 years ago. Like, this is my 4th year being a reader, and it took me a long time to figure out what I liked. And I think you just kind of have to be okay with that. And like, there's worse things you could spend your money on than a book you didn't like, if we're being honest. And also, be a library girl. I can't. I want to be a library girl. That is a goal in my future, is to stop buying all of my books because there's no reason to be doing that. And there's also nothing wrong with starting a book and then not finishing it. Like, you just have to try until you find something. And also, you don't have to read 1 million books. Like, if you read a book a year, you're reading. Like, reading is what matters. And you don't have to read anything good. You don't have to read anything you like. You don't have to read anything that's teaching you anything. But I do think these are a good selection to get you into reading. And also, if we're being so honest, reading is so low stakes. There's no consequence if you don't like a book, if you didn't finish a book, if it takes you a year to finish it, or if you read it in one sitting and it becomes your entire personality trait and then you get a tattoo for it. Reading is good, and I want more people to read, and I'm so glad that I finally got into reading, and I'm so sorry to all of my friends and my family who was like, you should read, and then it took me until I was 19 to become a reader. But here we are, and I'm so happy that these books exist. Anyway, if you liked this video, like and subscribe. If you want more, like, recommendations for more specific stuff, just let me know.